After you had an assessment, it's time to get to the fun part. We get to go over your results. So on this first page, this is our overview page. It's basically a snapshot of your body in its current condition. Each column is reporting on the average strength of the joint it's labeled for. So as you can see, there's the core, and then that's the bar graph that goes with it. Our goal is for this to be shaped like a pyramid, which would mean that every joint in your body is at balance. Ideally, we want to see your core to be the strongest part of your body because it's your stabilizers and keeps your balance in check. From there, the hips should be weaker than the core, the knees should be weaker than the hips, and so on. If that's not the case, and your report comes back looking like a roller coaster like this one, then your core isn't stable and you're basically forcing your joints to work twice as hard, which, causes a lot of compensation for the body. Say you're a roller coaster report and you go do a squat. Instead of working the intended muscle groups like glutes, like a pyramid report would, the strongest muscle group like your quads or hamstrings will make up for what's not properly working. So basically, your body is compensating for the lack of mobility and strength without even realizing it. And that just furthers the imbalance because the weaker muscle groups that need the attention are essentially getting left out of action. And that's where we're going to see a lot of injury and tightnesses build up, but we talk more about that in our muscle tension video, so check it out if you haven't already. When we go over this report, we usually have a lot of people ask, why is X so much stronger compared to everything else? And in this case, for Jerry Berry, his scapula is stronger than everything else, which is obviously not good. And you have to keep in mind that based off your lifestyle, that plays a huge role in the results of your assessment. This is really going to show you the motions that you're utilizing throughout the day. So if you run a lot or walk a lot, you'll see joints like the ankles shoot up over the other muscle groups. But remember, we're not looking for every muscle group to be super strong. True balance isn't at all high marks. We need to see a pyramid if we want to see some success. Okay, so now jumping in to looking at this entire report again, we're going to figure out first, what are we going to actually be working? What muscle, how do we determine what muscle groups, what exercises we're picking from this assessment? So already we start with the beginning, what's not causing us to have a pyramid? And as we can see, the first parts of the problem is the core is weaker than the scapulas and the knees, and that's practically it. So the core as overall strength has to get stronger than everything else. So then that's our big one that we have to shoot up, looks up to be around that 500 mark. And then we have to look at also what's out of balance is the hips. So we have to gain the overall strength within the hips at the same time as well. So if we move to the core, overall strength is a key, but whenever we're looking actually within the joint, we're looking at overall balance. And really overall balance is what we want to see is our goal is to be able to see green and yellows practically within the report here. So what we're looking for really within stage 1 is being able to see that our left to right balance, so left being this side right here, right being this report right here. And as you can see, this one's not a great example because we have pretty decent balance from left to right side. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and move to the hips is because that one has a lot more imbalances. So what we look at here is we practically break each joint into 3 different stages. So stage 1 is about getting this left to right side into balance, meaning we're trying to get green and yellows. So whenever we look at this, our hip flexion movement right here, we have 250 newtons of force on the left. We have 200 newtons of force on the right, which is creating a 22% imbalance from side to side. We see this as a problem is because you're utilizing one side of your body within the day more than you are the other. And what we have to do is we have to generate exercises to be able to rebalance this out. So then what we have to do is we have to implement an exercise that this right side is going to be able to do. So the force that's going to be needed within the exercise should be accustomed to what the right side is able to do. Because if you overload it and do what the left side can do, you're going to create even more imbalance. So our biggest goal is to be able to make sure that we're working on areas that are going to strengthen that right side, and then both of them can kind of progress together more or less. So then the other part that we look at is this bottom column right here. So these two right below the flexion and extension. So we have from the left side 250 newtons in flexion, and then on the left side we have 350 newtons of extension. So that creates a 33% imbalance from opposing muscle groups. So if I do hip flexion, the opposing motion to that would be hip extension. If we have an imbalance in that causes the skeletal structure to move out of its original position. Because what it's telling me is that anytime that our hip extension moves over 250 newtons of force in hip flexion, your body cannot hold that skeletal structure back, and that skeletal structure will move out of its original position. That causes a problem because whenever you move out of the original position, you could start hitting areas such as you're rubbing on different joints. You could be causing some of these opposing muscle groups, tendons to be overstretched. The ligaments that stabilize that joint in place could be moving out of place. So you could really cause a lot of problems by having this over a long period of time. And that's why we call it chronic issues, is because chronic means over time. This isn't something that the first time you do it's going to cause a problem, but you do it over and over and over again. It's that consistent degeneration that creates a problem. So practically, our stage 1's goal is to be able to get left to right side. So this column right here, all the way to the left to the right side of the body, all this right in here, all green and yellows, and everything underneath each column, green and yellows as well. So we're trying to accommodate balance there. So then, within stage 2 is all about joint balance. So practically what that means, if I'm balancing these two motions back to 350, then my goal for the entire joint is to be able to also get all of these down here balanced to 350 as well. So then within that, our entire body and our entire joint within the hip is going to be completely balanced to the stage that it needs to be. So then our body's not compensating in any other directions, because if these are stronger than everything else within the actual hips, then that's going to compensate for everything else. So then what we want to be able to do is to be able to make sure we're getting an overall joint balance, and then that it completes technically stage 2. And then stage 3 is being able to move to compound movements. So how we determine whether we move to that or not would be showing us that if we go back to our bar graph here, we have to ask ourselves, is the hips stronger than the knees, and is the knees stronger than the ankle? If our core to hip to knee to ankle balance is where it's supposed to be, and everything is following that proper pyramid, then we can move to compound exercises. But until then, we have to make sure that each stage is balanced all the way to stage 3, and then everything is following the proper stage balance. You might be wondering what a compound exercise is. Compound exercises would be like things like squats, lunges, and then if you're doing anything like maybe like CrossFit or something like that, it could be like snatches or overhead presses, anything that you're utilizing tons of different joints at one time. When it comes down to it, the overall goal of the report is to see what joints we're going to have to start working on. Not only that, but it helps us know what stage they're in so we can better create workouts for you. So next up, we'll guide you through our approach on creating workouts individualized to you, including each exercise we choose and the reasons behind it. So check it out.